Hello and welcome back to the tutorial series on how to use the SmplASketch. This episode is going to be working on how to use the DAW, and mostly we're going to focus on using the presets and the default waves and LFOs and stuff, and we're not going to worry about draw mode or using the device in this video specifically. So to start off with, the first thing we're going to want to do is adjust the sample name. If we don't, anything we export, whether that be an MP3 or a preset file, is just going to save as untitled dot whatever. So the way we're going to do that is we're just going to go up to the top left here, we're going to click on the name and type in whatever we want. So in this case, I'm just going to write test sample, I'm going to hit enter, and then that is saved everywhere we need it to be. So let's take a look at this display in the center. This is where everything is displayed in terms of representations of your waveforms. For the photosynthesis mode, that's displayed here as well. So if we look in this top left corner, this tells us what mode we're actively displaying. So there's 5 modes that we can switch through this knob by toggling from here to here. We can get to envelope mode, that's the second notch. The third notch is the LFO mode. The fourth one is this combinatory mode, which we can choose which of the first 3 modes we want to show simultaneously. So let's say we want to see everything, so we'll just check on show envelope here and show LFO here. And then the final mode is photosynthesis mode, which we'll go into in a separate video. But for now, let's just go on combinatory mode because we can see everything here. It's very nice and easy to demo stuff with. So we're going to start by changing the things on this display. Let's say I don't like the way these colors look. I want my sound wave to be purple. So we're just going to go up here to display controls, and we're going to shift over here to where it's purple, and now our sound wave is purple. Oh, but now my LFO is also purple, and I don't like that. I want my LFO to be orange, so we can just toggle it over here. Same for envelope, we can just change all the colors to whatever we want. But me, I like the default colors, so I'm going to just switch it back to that very easily. And let's say, hey, this screen is kind of hard to read these waveforms on. I want the screen to be fully white, or I want the screen to be darker, either this darker gray or this black color. You can change that there too. Or you want to say, hey, I can't see the waveform, so I'm going to make the lines a little bit thicker, which we could do by dragging the slider. So yeah, so that is all of our main display controls. The other thing you'll notice on this main Etch-a-Sketch style display is the volume knob, which controls the volume for the DAW. We can just turn this either way we want, but it is, I think 2 is a pretty good setting, which is where it's set by default. So let's go into what's in these editors down here. So there's 3 editors, and I'm going to switch them on to the default modes because we're not going to worry about using the device save and the draw mode in this video. So if we play back this sample right now by hitting either the sample button on the device if we're plugged in, or clicking this button up here, we'll hear something like this. So what that is it's this sine wave played through this envelope, and right now the LFO is off. So if we want, we can actually tap on this little thing, which is the show envelope playhead, and when we play back, you'll see this, which will go by as we're playing the envelope. It'll show you what part we're at. Now I'm going to turn that off because personally it's just another thing for me to think about while I'm doing this demo, but feel free to use it if you like. So yeah, if we're going to use a default wave, we have 6 options both for waveform and for LFO. There's a sine wave, triangle wave, ramp wave, square wave, saw wave, and step wave. So all of these sound like this in terms of the waves. So that's sine. Here's triangle. Here's ramp. Here's square. And here's saw. And last but not least, here's step. Now you'll notice that ramp, saw, and step sound pretty similar when it's the waveforms, but they do sound pretty different when you go into the LFO editor. So the other option that we have here in the waveform editor is this fine tuning knob and this coarse tuning knob. And you'll notice also right here there's this current pitch status. So that's going to show us what the current tonality of what we're playing. So right now that's concert C. So let's say I want to play a D sharp. Just drag the knob until you see it read D sharp. Hit sample again. Now we're playing a D sharp. Let's say for some reason I want a slightly flat D sharp. So I'm going to pull the fine tuning knob down a little bit, and you'll see there's a little minus that'll appear here. And there we have a slightly flat D sharp. We can go the other way as well. We can go slightly up. And there you have it. We can also change the octave with this slider for the waveform by dragging down there. And that's about all the basic wave control stuff. So I'm going to just set this back to C, and we'll set this right about here. Later in the video, I'll show how to use the kind of broader reset controls. But for now, we'll just put it on triangle wave, because that'll sound good. So the next thing to look at is the envelope editor. Now, if you'll see here on our envelope, there's no sort of device or draw component. So this is all you'll ever need to know about how to use the envelope. All you do is you just use these sliders to control the ratio of how much of each part of the ADSR is being played. That's really all there is to it. These knobs are all that's it. We can do something with a super quick attack, super quick decay, very little sustain, and then kind of a short release. We can also change the overall duration of an envelope, so we can make it super short. We can make it super long. And everything in between. So I'm just going to set this back to the middle here. And again, here, this is actually the first of the reset slots I'll show you. Everything over here, if you click one of these, it'll just reset that editor to how it was when you first opened it. So I'm going to reset the envelope. And there you go. So this LFO editor, first to use it, you have to make sure that you click LFO on. And once we do that, you'll now see we have our LFO there. So we'll play back. Here's what playback of this triangle wave sounds like with the LFO on. So there's two modes for the LFO. There's frequency modulation and there's amplitude modulation. So that's what frequency modulation sounds like. This is what amplitude modulation sounds like. And so there you go. So it's the same kind of deal as the waveform where you have these different presets. So here's what the different presets sound like with everything else, just at 0. So you already heard sine wave. We're going to do triangle wave. Here's saw wave, or sorry, ramp wave. Here's square wave. Here is saw wave. And here is step wave. Now I'm going to use step wave for the rest of the demo of this portion just to show off some of my favorite parts of this. So LFO length is how fast the LFO plays. So if we really drag this down, we'll get something like this. And I love that sound. And the LFO, of course, is going to repeat itself as many times as it needs to until it completes the envelope. And then we can change the frequency low bound to hear a different range. And the range bound is just how far from the low bound can we go. So now we go much higher, and we also go a little bit lower. The range extends both ways. So yeah, there you have it. These are the main editors. The other thing that we will take a look at before we go into the final part is just, let's say I want to export this as an MP3. All you have to do is you go up here, and you see this little MP3 button. Do not press this. Before you actually export to MP3, you have to pick a save spot. So for me, I'm going to just pick my desktop as my save slot. And you'll see there, desktop is set as my save spot. So let's say I got this sound, I tweaked it a little bit, I messed with this and this and this, and I really like the way that it sounds. Here, I'll do this too. I really like the way that this sounds, and I want to sample this, and I want to drag this into some other DAW. So what I'm going to do, I made sure that I have a name up here, I made sure that I have the data storage location set, and I am going to tap this button. And it'll play back, and you might have noticed that on my desktop there, that this showed up. And it is the name of the file, and it's a .wav file. So we're going to click quick look, and we're going to play this back. Sometimes it takes a minute just to finish encoding the file. But there you go. There you have it. And then you can drag that into the DAW of your choice, and you can do whatever you want with it. The other notable thing about import and export in this software is if you go up here, let's say I like all of this as like a preset. I want to open back up the DAW, and I want to see all of this again. So I'm going to hit this button, which is Save to Preset. And I'm going to make a new folder, and I'm going to call it Preset. You don't have to make a new folder. I'm just doing this for the sake of the video to keep it organized. We're going to open. So now, if we look in Preset, there is this file, testsample.smpl. So the only way you can open a .smpl file is if you open Import here, and let's say testsample.smpl. But before we do that, actually, I'm going to mess up the DAW. So I'm going to hit all these clear buttons to set everything back to normal. And then I'm going to mess with all of these colors. I'm going to make the draw thickness different just so it is a visible change when we go back. And so I'm going to then load our previous thing from import. There's our preset, and we're back to normal. So now we can keep working on this, do whatever we want. And those are all of the basics of the SmplASketch DAW without going into the device control or the draw mode or photosynthesis mode. And if you ever have any more questions, you can go up here and you can click the help button, which as of right now just takes you to the GitHub page, but once these videos are uploaded, it will take you to the help videos as well as an additional help page. I hope that helps, and I'll see you next time.